Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the chilling stories behind the headlines. Today, we dive into the haunting case of Maria Gonzalez, a Salvadoran woman whose dream journey turned into a nightmare. In the small picturesque town of Santa Tecla, El Salvador, 28-year-old Maria Gonzalez was known for her adventurous spirit and kind heart. Maria had always dreamed of exploring the world beyond her hometown, a place where life moved slowly and opportunities felt limited. She worked tirelessly at a local cafe, saving every penny to fund her travels. Her friends admired her determination, though some worried about her tendency to trust too easily. Maria's optimism was both her greatest strength and her most vulnerable flaw. She believed in the goodness of people, even when others saw only red flags. One evening, while attending a community event, Maria met Carlos Mendez, a man who seemed to carry an air of mystery. Carlos was new to Santa Tecla, having recently returned after serving time in prison. He spoke softly but confidently, sharing stories of his troubled past and his desire to start anew. Maria was captivated by his honesty and the way he openly acknowledged his mistakes. While others in the town whispered warnings about his criminal history, Maria saw a man who had paid his debt to society and deserved a second chance. Against the advice of her family and friends, she began spending more time with him. Carlos spoke of his travels across Central America, painting vivid pictures of lush jungles, pristine beaches, and vibrant cultures. Maria, who had never ventured far from Santa Tecla, felt her wanderlust ignite. When Carlos suggested they travel together, she hesitated only briefly before agreeing. The idea of exploring new places with someone who seemed so worldly and experienced was too enticing to resist. They planned a route that would take them through Guatemala, Honduras, and eventually into Mexico. Maria's family pleaded with her to reconsider, but she assured them she would be careful and stay in touch. The journey began with excitement and hope. Maria documented their travels on social media, posting photos of stunning landscapes and cheerful selfies. Her followers admired her courage and envied her adventures. In the early days, Carlos appeared to be the perfect travel companion, attentive, resourceful, and protective. He knew how to navigate unfamiliar terrain and seemed genuinely invested in making the trip memorable for Maria. But as they ventured deeper into remote areas, subtle changes began to emerge. Maria's social media updates grew less frequent, and her messages to loved ones became shorter and more cryptic. She mentioned feeling tired and overwhelmed, though she never elaborated. Her sister, Sophia, noticed a shift in her tone during their phone calls. Maria, who had always been so full of life, now sounded distant and uneasy. When Sophia pressed for details, Maria brushed off her concerns, insisting everything was fine. But the unease in her voice was unmistakable. As they crossed into Honduras, Carlos's behavior became increasingly erratic. He grew possessive, questioning Maria's interactions with locals and accusing her of being too trusting. Maria, who had always valued her independence, felt trapped but unsure of how to extricate herself from the situation. She confided in her diary, writing about her growing fear and her plans to leave Carlos once they reached the next town. But that town would never come. The last photo Maria posted was of a secluded beach in Honduras, its golden sands and turquoise waters, a stark contrast to the darkness that would soon envelop her story. Her final message to Sophia was a brief text heading to the beach. "We'll call soon." But the call never came. Days turned into weeks, and Maria's family grew increasingly desperate for answers. The journey that had begun with so much promise was now shrouded in mystery and dread, setting the stage for a tragedy that would leave a community in mourning and a family searching for the truth. As the days turned into weeks, Maria's family grew increasingly anxious. Her sister Sophia tried repeatedly to reach her, but Maria's phone went straight to voicemail. Desperate for answers, Sofia contacted Carlos, who claimed they were fine and simply enjoying their travels. His responses, however, were vague and evasive. He avoided specific details about their location and brushed off Sofia's concerns with a casual tone that only deepened her suspicion. Something felt off, but without concrete evidence, there was little she could do. Meanwhile, in the remote coastal region of Honduras where Maria and Carlos were last seen, locals began to notice unusual activity. A fisherman reported seeing a man matching Carlos's description near a secluded beach, acting nervously and carrying a large duffel bag. The man had been alone, which struck the fisherman as odd since he had seen the couple together just days earlier. Another witness, a shopkeeper in a nearby village, recalled selling supplies to Carlos, but noted that Maria was nowhere in sight. When asked about her, Carlos had mumbled something about her being tired and resting at their campsite. The shopkeeper found his demeanor unsettling, but at the time, she hadn't thought much of it. These reports eventually reached local authorities, who began to piece together a troubling picture. Carlos's criminal history, which included charges of assault and robbery, raised red flags. Investigators started to suspect that Maria's disappearance might not be a simple case of a traveler losing contact with home. They combed the area where the couple had last been seen, searching for any clues that might shed light on Maria's whereabouts. The dense jungle and rugged terrain made the search challenging, but the team pressed on, driven by the urgency of the case. Back in Santa Tecla, Maria's family launched a social media campaign to raise awareness about her disappearance. They shared her photos, travel itinerary, and details about Carlos, hoping someone might come forward with information. The campaign quickly gained traction, drawing attention from international media and online communities. Tips began to pour in from across Central America, some credible, others not. Among the flood of messages was one from a truck driver who claimed to have given Carlos a ride to a remote village in Guatemala. The driver recalled that Carlos had been alone and seemed agitated, repeatedly checking his phone and glancing over his shoulder as if expecting to be followed. As the investigation deepened, authorities discovered that Carlos had a history of manipulating and controlling behavior, particularly toward women. Former acquaintances described him as charming at first, but quick to turn possessive and volatile. This revelation added a chilling layer to the case, suggesting that Maria might have been in danger long before her disappearance. Investigators also learned that Carlos had been in contact with old criminal associates during his travels, raising questions about whether he had returned to his former lifestyle. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Carlos remained elusive. He seemed to have a knack for staying one step ahead of the authorities, moving frequently and avoiding areas with heavy police presence. The search for Maria, meanwhile, yielded little progress. Her family clung to hope, but as the days turned into weeks, that hope began to wane. The once vibrant story of a young woman chasing her dreams had taken a dark and ominous turn, leaving everyone involved desperate for answers and fearing the worst. Maria's disappearance quickly escalated into an international case, drawing attention from law enforcement agencies across Central America. Her family, refusing to give up, filed a formal missing person report, which triggered a coordinated effort between Salvadoran, Honduran, and Guatemalan authorities. The investigation revealed troubling details about Carlos's past, including his history of violent crimes and his connections to criminal networks. These findings intensified the urgency of the search, as investigators feared Maria might be in grave danger. The breakthrough came unexpectedly when a local fisherman, scouring the shoreline for his daily catch, stumbled upon a blood-stained backpack partially buried in the sand. Inside, investigators found Maria's passport, a diary, and a few personal items, including a necklace she always wore. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community and confirmed the worst fears of Maria's family. The backpack was identified as the one she had been carrying during her travels, and the bloodstains suggested a violent altercation. The diary, filled with Maria's handwritten entries, provided a chilling glimpse into her final days. In the diary, Maria wrote about her growing unease with Carlos. She described how his behavior had shifted from charming and attentive to controlling and paranoid. He had begun to isolate her from others, discouraging her from speaking to locals or making friends along their journey. Maria confided that she felt trapped but was unsure how to escape, especially in unfamiliar and remote areas. Her last entry, written just days before her disappearance, detailed her plan to leave Carlos at the next town and return home. She expressed fear that he might not let her go easily, but she was determined to reclaim her freedom. The discovery of the backpack and diary shifted the focus of the investigation. Authorities now had concrete evidence linking Carlos to Maria's disappearance, and the bloodstains raised the possibility of foul play. Forensic experts analyzed the blood, confirming it belonged to Maria, while investigators scoured the area where the backpack was found for additional clues. They discovered a makeshift campsite nearby, with signs of a struggle-torn fabric, broken branches, and footprints leading deeper into the jungle. The evidence painted a grim picture, suggesting that Maria had tried to flee but was overpowered. As the investigation progressed, Carlos's past came under intense scrutiny. Authorities uncovered that he had a pattern of manipulating and exploiting vulnerable individuals, particularly women. Former acquaintances revealed that he often used charm to gain trust before revealing his darker side. This pattern aligned with Maria's diary entries, which described how Carlos had initially been kind and attentive before his behavior turned sinister. Investigators also learned that Carlos had been in contact with known criminals during his travels, raising suspicions that he might have been involved in illegal activities. Despite the mounting evidence, Carlos remained at large. He seemed to have vanished into the vast and unforgiving landscape of Central America, leaving no trace of his whereabouts. Maria's family, devastated by the discovery of her backpack and diary, held on to the slim hope that she might still be alive. They continued to plead for information, sharing her story on social media and in the press. The case had become more than just a missing person investigation. It was now a race against time to uncover the truth and bring justice for Maria. The once bright dream of adventure had turned into a harrowing nightmare, leaving a family and a community in anguish. With the discovery of Maria's blood-stained backpack and diary, the investigation took on a new sense of urgency. Authorities issued an international arrest warrant for Carlos, labeling him as armed and dangerous. The manhunt spanned multiple countries, with law enforcement agencies collaborating to track his movements. Carlos, however, proved to be a cunning fugitive, leveraging his knowledge of the region's terrain and his connections to stay one step ahead. He was spotted in various locations: a market in Guatemala, a bus station in Honduras, and even a remote village in Nicaragua, but each time, he managed to slip away before authorities could apprehend him. Maria's family, determined to keep her story in the public eye, launched a widespread social media campaign. They shared her photos, details of her disappearance, and information about Carlos, urging anyone with information to come forward. The campaign quickly gained traction, drawing attention from international media and online communities. Tips began to flood in from across Central America, some credible, others less so. Among the most promising leads was a report from a truck driver who claimed to have given Carlos a ride to a remote area near the Guatemalan border. The driver recalled that Carlos had been alone, carrying a duffel bag and behaving erratically, constantly looking over his shoulder as if expecting to be followed. Investigators followed the lead, focusing their efforts on the rugged, jungle-covered region near the border. The area was known for its dense foliage and lack of infrastructure, making it an ideal hiding spot for someone trying to evade capture. Search teams, accompanied by tracking dogs, combed the area for days, battling harsh conditions and limited visibility. The breakthrough came when a local farmer reported seeing a man matching Carlos's description near an abandoned hut deep in the jungle. The farmer noted that the man had been acting suspiciously, avoiding contact with others and only venturing out at night. Authorities quickly descended on the area, surrounding the hut and preparing for a confrontation. Carlos, realizing he was cornered, attempted to flee but was apprehended after a brief struggle. He was found in possession of Maria's belongings, including her phone and some of the items from her backpack. The discovery provided further evidence linking him to her disappearance, but Carlos remained tight-lipped during initial interrogations, refusing to reveal Maria's fate or his involvement in her disappearance. As the investigation continued, forensic experts analyzed the items found in Carlos's possession, searching for clues that might lead them to Maria. They also revisited the campsite near where her backpack had been discovered, uncovering additional evidence of a struggle, including torn clothing and traces of blood. The evidence painted a grim picture, suggesting that Maria had been attacked and possibly killed, though her body had yet to be found. Carlos's arrest brought a sense of relief to Maria's family, but the lack of closure weighed heavily on them. They continued to press for answers, determined to uncover the truth about what had happened to Maria. The case had become more than just a criminal investigation. It was a fight for justice, a quest to ensure that Maria's story would not be forgotten. As the legal proceedings began, the world watched, hoping that the truth would finally come to light, and that Maria's family would find the closure they so desperately needed. Carlos's capture marked a turning point in the case, but the fight for justice was far from over. Extradited to Honduras to face charges, he was held in a high-security prison as authorities prepared for the trial. The evidence against him was substantial. Maria's blood-stained backpack, her diary detailing her fear of him, and the belongings of hers found in his possession. Forensic experts testified that the blood on the backpack matched Maria's DNA, and the diary entries provided a chilling account of her final days. Witnesses, including the fisherman who discovered the backpack and the truck driver who had given Carlos a ride, also testified, painting a damning picture of his actions. The trial drew widespread attention, with media outlets from across Central America and beyond covering every detail. Maria's family attended every hearing, determined to see justice served. They shared their grief and frustration with the press, emphasizing that Maria's story was not just about one woman's tragic end, but also about the dangers of trusting those with hidden agendas. The case became a symbol of the need for greater awareness and protection for travelers, especially women, who might find themselves vulnerable in unfamiliar settings. Carlos, meanwhile, maintained his silence for much of the trial. His defense team attempted to cast doubt on the evidence, suggesting that Maria's disappearance could have been the result of an accident or an encounter with other individuals. However, the prosecution's case was too strong. The diary entries, in particular, were devastating, revealing Maria's growing fear of Carlos and her plans to leave him. The jury was visibly moved as they listened to the recordings of her words, read aloud in court. It was clear that Maria had been a victim of manipulation and control, and her final days had been marked by fear and desperation. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Carlos was found guilty of Maria's murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow as the judge handed down a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Maria's family, though heartbroken, expressed gratitude that justice had been served. They knew it wouldn't bring Maria back, but they hoped it would prevent others from suffering a similar fate. In the aftermath of the trial, Maria's family established a foundation in her name, dedicated to supporting victims of violence and raising awareness about the dangers of traveling with individuals who have a criminal past. The foundation also worked to provide resources and education for women, empowering them to recognize red flags and protect themselves in potentially dangerous situations. Maria's story became a cautionary tale, shared widely in schools, community centers, and online platforms. The documentary ends with a tribute to Maria, showcasing her vibrant life and the impact she had on those around her. Photos and videos of her smiling, exploring, and living her dreams serve as a poignant reminder of what was lost. Her family and friends share their memories, emphasizing her kindness, courage, and unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Though her life was tragically cut short, Maria's legacy lives on, inspiring others to pursue their dreams while remaining vigilant and aware of the risks that may lie ahead. Her story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of darkness, hope and justice can prevail.